Jackson County Courthouse, Oregon, 9 a.m. The sky was overcast, dark clouds swirling above as if mirroring the heavy mood of those walking into the courthouse that morning. Outside, a crowd had gathered tightly beneath black umbrellas, pushing against the police barricades, eager to catch a glimpse of the woman whose actions had enraged the entire town, Vanessa Carter. The defendant stepped out of the police vehicle, handcuffs glinting under the gray light, her eyes cold and emotionless. She showed no signs of flinching under the piercing, angry glares of the people surrounding her. Her appearance was neat, professional, dressed in a black suit, but it was her face that unsettled everyone, not for its harshness, but for its terrifying indifference in the face of the horrific charges brought against her. The abuse of a 3-year-old girl. Inside the courtroom, the tension was suffocating. Citizens, reporters, and police officers filled the seats. Though this was a domestic abuse case, the level of cruelty described in the indictment had shocked the community. Emily Carter, the 3-year-old girl, Vanessa's stepdaughter, had been found with multiple bruises and scratches, mentally traumatized, and unwilling to interact with anyone except her biological father and one police dog. Emily's father, Michael Carter, sat silently in the front row. His head bowed, fingers laced so tightly they turned white, his vacant stare fixed on the wooden floor beneath his feet. No one could guess what was running through his mind, whether it was grief, guilt, or the crushing weight of having placed his daughter in the hands of someone he once trusted. Across from him stood Vanessa, once admired by neighbors for her grace and charm, now facing judgment as a cold-hearted abuser. She still wore a faint, mocking smile and occasionally turned to glance at Michael, as if challenging him, as if silently asking, "Do you really believe this?" Presiding over the case was Judge Ellen Morris, a stern but compassionate woman with a reputation for justice. She struck the gavel and called the court to order. Her eyes passed over the defendant with chilling calm, then shifted to the defense attorney and the prosecutor, as if weighing which side would speak the truth today. The prosecution laid out a damning sequence of evidence: photographs of Emily's injuries, medical reports, and testimony from neighbors and preschool teachers. All described Emily as a cheerful, lively child who had recently become withdrawn, fearful, and emotionally scarred. Yet the case remained in a fragile state because Emily had refused to speak. Not to doctors, not to police, not to anyone. With no direct testimony, every piece of evidence was circumstantial, and Vanessa's defense team was quick to deflect blame, suggesting the injuries were the result of unfortunate accidents. In a courtroom stretched tight with suspense, everyone understood one grim truth. If Emily did not speak, Vanessa might walk free. And no one, absolutely no one, wanted to see that happen. No one, except for one last witness, one who had not yet appeared in the courtroom. A 4-legged soul with loyal eyes. The only friend Emily had allowed into her silent world. Max, the police dog. The wooden door at the back of the courtroom slowly opened, and all eyes immediately turned toward it. A police officer entered, leading a police dog, a pale yellow Labrador with a sturdy build and a shiny coat that looked meticulously groomed. But what captured everyone's attention wasn't just the calm demeanor of the dog. It was the tiny little girl tightly gripping the dog's leash, Emily Carter. The entire room fell silent, as if holding its breath. Emily walked slowly, her tiny hand clutching the dog's collar. Her cheeks still bore faint bruises. She wore a simple pink dress, her hair tied awkwardly to one side, and her large eyes were fixed on the tiled floor, as if trying to avoid all attention. Each step she took was a tremendous effort, and without the dog beside her, she might have collapsed from fear. Max, the police dog specially trained for cases involving children with psychological trauma, seemed to sense the tension. He walked at a slow, steady pace so Emily wouldn't be pulled along too fast, occasionally lifting his head to gently lick her hand, offering silent reassurance. No one knew exactly what had happened during the first therapy sessions between Emily and Max. Only that from a little girl who refused to speak, refused to eat, and often startled awake crying at night, she had begun to change after meeting this dog. She won't speak to the doctors, she won't speak to her father, and she won't speak to me, said the court's psychological specialist Lisa Harrow, standing up to address the courtroom. But she talks to Max. She whispers to him when she thinks no one else is listening. And today she asked to bring Max with her to court. The courtroom stirred. Many people were moved to tears. Michael Carter gripped the edge of his seat tightly, his eyes red as he looked at his daughter. No longer a trembling victim hiding behind hospital doors, but a brave witness, even at just 3 years old. Judge Morris signaled that Emily could come forward to the witness stand with Max. A special chair was prepared, just the right height for the little girl. Security staff gently lowered a microphone toward her, but Emily remained silent. She only held Max's collar tightly, her head still bowed. "Emily," Mrs. Harrow said gently, sitting beside her, "you can say anything you want. No one will hurt you. Max is here." 1 minute passed, 2 minutes. No one dared to breathe loudly. Vanessa, sitting in the back, began to smirk and was about to turn to her lawyer when suddenly Emily raised her hand and pointed directly at her. Her eyes were wide, trembling, but determined. "She hit me," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper but echoing throughout the courtroom. Max barked once, not out of distress, but like a confirmation. For a brief moment, the room exploded. Tears, whispers, and Judge Morris's gaze darkened, no longer doubtful, but filled with restrained fury. Vanessa's face went pale. Her usual arrogance vanished. In less than a minute, a 3-year-old girl and a loyal dog had completely changed the course of the trial. The courtroom fell silent for several seconds after Emily pointed at Vanessa and uttered the short but piercing words, "She hit me." Each word echoed like thunder in a clear sky, making the atmosphere thick, as if someone had just drawn a curtain over the light, leaving stunned faces frozen in shock. Max, the loyal police dog, stood close beside Emily, his eyes alertly fixed on Vanessa. No one told him to do so, but Max was trained to read emotions, and right now he was far from calm. Vanessa began to shrink back in her chair, her face drained of color as if the blood had been sucked out. Her lawyer, Mr. Griffin, tried to regain control, standing up to object. "Your Honor," he said hurriedly, "the testimony of a 3-year-old child cannot be considered conclusive evidence, especially when it is influenced by an animal, a dog that might cause the child to imagine things or react according to training." Whispers spread quickly. A few people in the courtroom turned to glare at Griffin with irritation. Judge Morris furrowed her brow, struck the gavel on the bench, and fixed him with a stern look. "Mr. Griffin, this is not a circus act, and the animal you are referring to is a K-9 officer officially recognized by the state police for assisting young victims." She paused, eyes shifting toward Emily, then back to Vanessa. "We do not rely on a single testimony alone, but now the child has spoken, and that changes everything." Vanessa remained silent, but her eyes, cold and empty, said more than any words could. No longer the sweet-smiling woman in front of the cameras, or the one who answered reporters with flowery phrases, Vanessa was now a cornered figure. Michael Carter nearly lost his breath watching his daughter say what he had always feared. The guilt of bringing a woman like Vanessa into their lives weighed on him like a crushing weight from within. Yet in that moment, he saw in Emily's eyes, despite being only 3 years old, a determination he had never seen before. Mrs. Harrow gently turned to the girl. "Emily, can you tell me and everyone else more about what happened?" The girl looked toward Max. The dog sat down and licked her hand. Once again, it seemed only with Max beside her did Emily dare to face her pain. "She locked me in a dark room, locked the door, didn't let me eat," Emily whispered, her voice broken. "I cried. Max came later. Max found me." Mrs. Harrow shuddered. The courtroom held its breath again. Judge Morris jotted something down in her notebook, then looked up, her gaze sharp as a knife aimed at Vanessa. "Is there anyone here who still doubts the nature of this case?" An investigating officer stood, consulting with the prosecutor. Several photos appeared on the screen, shots from the scene, from the basement room where Emily was confined. Scratches, a dirty mattress, and most importantly, Max's paw prints leading straight to the door after being missing for 24 hours with the girl. Max was the first to find her. The entire courtroom erupted once again, but this time it was the truth coming to light. too brutal for anyone to ignore. The tension in the courtroom seemed unbearable. All eyes fixed on Vanessa, the woman just accused by the very child she had adopted. But what shook the trial even more wasn't only Emily's testimony, but the evidence about to be presented. Prosecutor Harrow stood up holding a thick file. "Your Honor," she began, her voice calm but sharp as a blade, "up to this point, all accusations against the defendant, Vanessa Holloway, have been based on indirect signs. But now we hold concrete evidence, including photographic logs, location data, and testimony from an anonymous witness, proving that she deliberately abused Emily Carter." A large screen lit up. Displayed were a series of images extracted from the surveillance cameras inside the house, devices Vanessa was unaware were still active after she hired a company to install them, but failed to remove the data. The clips showed Emily being dragged roughly across the floor, locked inside a dark basement room, the child's muffled screams behind the closed door. But more chilling, Vanessa's cold, emotionless face in every frame. At the back of the courtroom, Michael held Emily tightly on his lap, covering her ears as the dreadful sounds played. Max lay under the chair, ears perked, eyes never leaving the screen, as if confirming with silent certainty it was her. "We also have testimony from a neighbor, Mrs. Margaret Sloan, who noticed unusual signs from the house for months," Harrow continued. "Mrs. Sloan heard crying at night and often saw Emily standing alone on the porch in the freezing cold, unattended. An elderly woman was led into the courtroom, trembling but resolute. I called the police once, but Vanessa always responded sweetly that the girl was just being spoiled, that everything was fine. I didn't do enough to save Emily." "You did the right thing by speaking out today," Harrow said firmly. Griffin struggled, standing to object to the evidence, but Judge Morris waved him off. "That's enough, Mr. Griffin. If the defendant has anything to say, this is her last chance." Vanessa stood, her eyes no longer cold but filled with panic. I didn't mean to. The girl cried too much. I couldn't bear the crying. I thought if I punished her a little, she would behave. But she wouldn't listen." "A 3-year-old child is not a prisoner to be punished," Morris said, her tone deep and cold. "You crossed the line of law and morality a long time ago." Silence stretched for several seconds. Michael hugged Emily tightly. He said nothing, only looked at Vanessa with a gaze free of hatred, only an unnameable disappointment. He once trusted that woman, once entrusted his daughter's care to her, and now the price nearly paid was the life of his most beloved child. Max stood, as if sensing what was about to happen. He moved beside Michael and Emily, gently nudging the girl's hand with his nose, an instinctive act of comfort. Emily smiled, the first time during the entire trial. Judge Morris looked around, struck the gavel. "The trial will continue tomorrow morning for sentencing. But I can affirm the evidence is sufficient to charge the defendant with severe child abuse." The court was adjourned. But for Michael and Emily, a measure of justice had been restored. And thanks to Max, the silent companion always present at the right moment, the truth had finally been revealed. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Public attention had grown after the leaked videos, images of a trembling 3-year-old girl trapped in a basement and a police dog identifying the abuser in court had become the town's focal point. The media lined up outside, but inside no one dared to break the heavy silence before the verdict was announced. Judge Morris entered, solemn and resolute. Michael sat holding Emily on his lap, while Max curled quietly at their feet, his sharp but calm eyes seeming to understand this moment marked the end of a long nightmare. After reviewing all the evidence, witness testimonies, and noting the defendant Vanessa Holloway's evasive and manipulative behavior throughout the investigation, the judge began, her voice deep and firm as a rock. "The court finds the defendant guilty of first-degree child abuse, intentionally causing severe physical and psychological harm to a minor." Vanessa stood there, pale, no longer resisting, no tears left. All defenses were exhausted. The false masks she once wore had fallen away, leaving an empty shell, no remorse, only fear. "The court sentences you to 25 years in prison with no parole for the first 15 years. Additionally, you are stripped of any custody or access rights to children in the future. The sound of the gavel struck down like a heavy full stop, cutting off all of Vanessa's attempts to escape justice. Michael didn't cry, but deep relief shone in his eyes as if a burden he had carried for so long was finally lifted. He bent down, whispering to Emily, "You're safe now, sweetheart. It's all over." Emily didn't answer, burying her face in her father's shoulder, but her small hand reached out to gently rest on Max's head. The dog looked up at her, softly licking her tiny wrist. An invisible yet strong bond connected them, not just human and animal, but two wounded souls now finding each other like light at the end of a tunnel. After the trial, a small press conference was held outside. Michael refused to give a long speech. He only said one sentence, looking down at Max sitting obediently by Emily's side. "If not for Max, I'm not sure my daughter would be alive. He's not just a police dog, he's a hero." At the police department, Officer Daniels, Max's trainer, silently watched the scene with moist eyes. "He always knew how to do the right thing," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. A week later, in the town's Central Park, Max was awarded the Medal of Honor for courageous police dogs. Emily placed a wreath around Max's neck while Michael gave a brief speech. "Max saved the truth, saved my daughter, and saved me from torment for 3 long years." The sky was clear blue without a single cloud. The midday sun shone gently, like nature's comfort to the hearts once broken. Emily laughed loudly, the first time since she left that house. Max jumped up, wagging his tail, playing with her. People clapped, but in Michael's mind, nothing compared to the sound of his daughter's laughter, a sound he once thought he would never hear again. Life would never be the same, but it could start anew with love, courage, and a dog named Max. Epilogue, the third spring. 3 years had passed since that fateful trial. The small town had grown peaceful again, but Michael and Emily's lives were never the same because they no longer lived in fear. They lived with gratitude. The new wooden house nestled at the edge of the forest, where sunlight filtered through the leaves and the breeze softly sang through the oak doors. Michael had quit the police force and chose to work part-time at a center supporting abused children. He wanted to turn old pain into a guiding light for others. Emily was now 6 years old. She was in first grade at a small school with new friends, a place where no one mentioned the name Vanessa or the dark basement where she was once trapped. She talked more, laughed more, but whenever she told stories in class, the name Max was always the first to come up. "He's my hero," Emily told her teacher, her voice clear and confident. Max had grown older, his coat flecked with some gray, his steps slower, but his eyes still sparkled brightly every time he saw Emily walk out of the school gate. Every morning, Max stood beside her small purple backpack, waiting to walk with her to the bus stop. Every night, he lay guarding by her bed, occasionally letting out a low growl, a reminder that he was still there, still protecting his little owner. One afternoon, as the sunset cast long shadows across the porch, Emily sat next to Max, stroking his head. She whispered, "Max, do you know? Without you, I'd still be in a very dark, very cold place. I didn't know how to get out. But you came, and I believe in you, like I believe in the light." Max nudged his head against her hand, eyes half closed, as if understanding every unspoken word. Michael stood silently at a distance, his heart full of emotion. He was no longer the man broken by loss. Now he was the father of a strong little girl and the companion of a four-legged hero. On a special day of the year, the very day 3 years ago when the trial took place, Michael, Emily, and Max returned to the town hall together. Not because they were summoned, but because they were invited. Emily received a small honorary certificate for her bravery in standing up to her abuser, and Max was once again honored publicly, not for duty, but for unwavering loyalty. After the ceremony, Emily tugged Michael's sleeve and asked, "Dad, when I grow up, can I save someone like Max?" Michael knelt down, placing his hand on her shoulder. "You already have, Emily. You saved yourself, and you taught me how to live again." That day, a gentle rain began to fall, but no one hurried away. They stood beneath the porch roof, silently watching the raindrops fall on the pavement, as if washing away all old wounds. And in that rain, Max wagged his tail and let out a soft bark, as if telling the world, "This story isn't over. It's only just beginning."